The third question I have is, what advice do you have about taking great commission risks amidst the realities of the pandemic? And some of the background questions to this is going and visiting somebody who's sick with maybe the virus, going and visiting somebody in isolation and risking getting the virus, and just ministry in general. So, this is a serious question because of who else you're putting at risk. For example, if you have roommates, if you're single, or if you have a spouse and children, that's a risk you are doing something that impacts them. And so each person is different on what they feel called to, but are your children called to experience the virus because of God's call on your life? And that's a real serious question. I can tell you, I felt that I was not going to risk myself going to orphanages and places where there's a lot of disease when my children were little. And my first calling was to my children and to protect them and keep them healthy so that they could grow healthy. That was my first call. I can't say that that's how everybody would make their decisions. I can just give you an example. So, the thing is it's easy to say, oh, here's the right thing to do, when instead I would want to encourage you to listen very carefully to what the Holy Spirit wants you to do in that situation. And if somebody is dying, we often will do a risk to help that person, no matter what the cost. If your children are older, it's worth asking them, what is their input on the situation? What would they want you to do, knowing the risk to themselves? And even a 6 or an 8-year-old can give a coherent response to that question. And especially if they're teenagers, they can get input. And the thing is if you get their input, if you help them understand the risk and the repercussions on themselves, what happens is it minimizes their anger they might feel towards God if something doesn't turn out the way they want it to turn out. So let's just talk in real terms now. You tell your family ahead of time that you're considering, you feel led by the Lord to go and do something that could cause danger to them. Maybe they would get the virus. They could get very sick and maybe die. What would be their input? And they give you input and they say, okay, mommy, okay, daddy, we want you to do that. We're on board. We understand. And you go and then you do indeed get sick, right? They're going to understand that this is the cause of evil in the world and not God's fault. And that's really important because we don't want to be serving God cross-culturally and have our children decide that they hate God and turn away from Him later on, right? What if you don't talk to your family, but you feel called and you just go ahead and do this thing and you get sick? Well, it's really easy when you're a child or a teenager to blame God for that and to blame God for making you sick, making them sick, or even if you die because of it. And so it's really important to bring your family along. Even if you're a single and your family's at home, bring them along, help them understand. I mean, bring them along verbally, help them understand what you're doing and the risks you're taking and that you're trusting God no matter what happens. Like Job said, whether good or whether bad, he follows the Lord and he blesses his name no matter what. And you can be a real testimony to those that are supporting you and those that are your family by having these conversations ahead of time. But just really being prayerful and thoughtful. What is the Holy Spirit asking you to do to love your neighbor, love others, especially those who don't know him? And if they die because of the sickness, they have an eternity separated from a holy Father who loves them. And so that's, again, it's a general question because each situation is so different. Each risk situation, we really need to be walking close to the Holy Spirit and listening to what he wants us to do and helping our families understand at the exact same time. You may have felt that you've already told them all this. I would encourage you to do it again. Make sure again. The other thing about taking Great Commission risks right now with the realities of this pandemic, and we don't know how our bodies would respond, would we get so sick that we would die? Everybody's different, is living each day having taken care of all the loose ends in your life, all right? Making sure your relationships are clean of any unresolved conflict when it's possible. It does take two to resolve conflict. Living in such a way that when you feel called to say something positive, encouraging to another, that you say that. And I cultivate this during our time in Afghanistan because we never knew which day we'd be kidnapped. And I find to this day when I feel moved to tell someone something, because I don't know when they're going to die, I tell them how meaningful they were to me. And I want them to know that so that if they die, I feel good. And if I die, I know I've taken care of everything that I need to take care of so that they can live peacefully the rest of their life. So just really living in light of, man, if I get sick tomorrow and was unable to say what I want to say, I've taken care of that. I'm done. And so I just want to encourage you with that perspective as you go about your day and consider what risks the Lord wants you to take at this time in sharing his love with people who don't know him.